The Could Be Better podcast network is sponsored in part by the Frederick Let There Be Rock School. Let There Be Rock School, located in Frederick, provides a world-renowned music lesson program and an unparalleled after-school rock and roll community center. Listeners can now get their first lesson free when you tell them Could Be Better sent you. Visit www.frederickrockschool.com and click the contact button in the top right-hand corner of the page to get yourself started.
Again, listeners of the show get their first lesson free if you tell them Could Be Better sent you. It's not too late or too early to learn your favorite Olivia Rodrigo, Dragon Force, or the Black Keys song. So go now to www.frederickrockschool.com and reach out today for your first free lesson. Welcome to the Could Be Better podcast, brought to you by Old Mother Brewing Company. This is our no music episode for this month. So if you were tuning in for some cool music, you can go ahead and skip it. Colin, hi. I missed you.
I missed you more. I guess this means we can't talk about the show happening this weekend or the show that we put on this past weekend. This is Definitely. A bad time for this episode to happen.
Yeah, our producers are total dumpster people, I guess. Or as Frank Reynolds says, it's trash people. So anyway, definitely don't want to talk about Sky Stage and how much fun that was and how we were there and had a blast. And definitely not going to talk about you playing drums for the Super Sick show on Saturday. That is going to be there. And definitely not talking about the show that's on Friday either. And it's just going to be a total ton of fun. But that's not what we're here for. We're here for no music.
That's right, bruv. As Frank Reynolds would say, go wake up your pillhead mother.
Listen, there are some great one-liners from him before he decided to do Jersey Mike commercials.
No, the one that I just quoted was from the Christmas special, which is at least 15 years old now. Like that's It's insane. But that cracks me up every time. And then the Charlie, did you F word my mom? Did you?
That show is just it makes me so happy that like Rob McElhenney is such a
good try.
Is that not what it is?
No, it is. But you seemed unsure.
Well, I wanted to snootify how that I knew you could say it because I do watch Welcome to Wrexham on FX on
That is
Thursday
the least
nights.
surprising thing I've heard all day.
Yeah, and it's pretty good. But he's like a super wholesome dude, and it's like, oh, cool. But then like their show is just stuff, it's just them, and it's hysterical. But I don't know. Anyway, so cue the music for our specialties.
I'll be sure to drop that in post.
Yeah, specialty long tease segments brought to everybody by our friends in specialties, where if you tell them that Could Be Better sent you, you get 10% off your first order. So just to remind people, because we only, and actually really to remind us, we do this episode once a month. So we need to kind of get familiar with the format. So how it works is we just ask one question and there's no time limit. And so here's
the question. I got last month, you asked me about food apps, and this will be pretty much on the same light level. So Chris, I can't wait. The three people listening are going to hear this question and immediately turn off this episode. So I'm
about to end it right now. It's going to be great.
So Chris, do you believe in God?
Yeah. Okay. So
I mean, it's awful to ask a yes or no question, but the implication was that you wouldn't just say yes or no.
Yeah, no, I love, there's so many ways to answer that yes or no question in an annoying way. So I'm going to choose to be like as not annoying as possible. So for people that do listen to the show, which I've been pretty bad about posting on Instagram. So it's like, we are putting out shows every week on all of our podcast networks shows. But if you're not subscribing, you're not getting the little alert. So if you didn't listen last week, we did Andrew Colin and I talked about Cornerstone Festival and Purple Door Festival, and it's like generally like a generally they're speaking, they're all Christian bands or labeled Christian bands, and they're playing shows. So it was kind of a cool, when we were having our pre-show meeting over pizza and water, we were talking about this topics, and God or religion came up, and so I was kind of excited. It's like, hey, this all kind of works. And Colin goes, that's why I'm a professional. So I'm not stalling. I have
Well,
something kind of,
kind of
but I
sounds
am,
like it.
I am. It does sound like I'm
I guess
stalling.
I'll rephrase the question then, because it's obvious you believe in God. What is your relationship with God? That's
That's
probably
a
a better question.
yeah. So I mean, it is ever changing. I think recently, within the last, well, so recently I have started saying the phrase, wouldn't it be a shame if I believed the same thing that I've always believed for my entire life? And people kind of look at me kind of weird, and they go, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, if I believed, like, and sorry, Kyrie, like if the earth is flat, and I believe it my entire life, and then I watch the Discovery Channel, I listen to Morgan Freeman, I maybe even like read a couple like scientific journals or like look at a map, um, and I still believe that the earth is flat, like that's kind of small thinking, and I'm not choosing to grow. And so people go, yeah. And then I kind of go, so then why do people kind of get so upset when people change their view on God or religion or Jesus Christ or whatever it is, or the supernatural or the spiritual world? And people kind of always look at me weird. And I've just kind of accepted it at this point, because I'm a, for people that know me, like I'm kind of I'm either in or I'm out on something. Like I'm very rarely lukewarm on stuff. And so it's like when people kind of hear that, and they're like, "Oh, Chris, like you have this thought of something," like, yeah, it's just where I'm at right now, but like I'm 100% on it right now, but I'm 100% sure I'm going to change my mind in a year. So anyway, to answer your question, like, so like, what's my relationship with God look like? Today, it's something of I have daily habits that I do, or daily practices that I kind of follow, that help ground me and center me and kind of refocus my mind, a little bit of my body, but then mostly my soul. And so those things kind of like is a connection to God. I think the interpretation of the um God the Father kind of thing, I've just kind of moved on past that. I think there's a lot of different interpretations for what you want God to be. And so I find beauty in that. Like I used to be like super regimented. It's like, no, it must be this this Jewish God, because he's the one, because that's what this book is about. And so surely that's it. Um, and then it's like, well, hey, like you find that there is some beauty and mystery and um unknown about a lot of other gods, and I'm like, that's kind of cool. um so for me, my relationship with God is something that's like, it's personal, right? It's probably not what anyone that's listening is like, and that's super cool. And I love that it can be different, and it doesn't have to be this way or the highway. And so
Well,
that's yeah.
you said you have rituals. Um, I guess a good place to start would be prayer. Do you pray every day? Do you pray in the morning? Do you pray at night? Do you not pray anymore? I know you go to church because you play at church,
I
but
do.
what's your relationship in that sense? Do you pray? Do you read?
Yeah. So prayer, um, prayer is a very difficult um thing for me, because it's like, man, I believe that there is a uh God that cares about everybody, and loves everybody, and to think of the notion that um this being picks and chooses which prayers to listen to or which ones are important, and then chooses to do certain things or not do certain things based on uh your conditional love for this supreme being is a little weird. So I've kind of rejected the general notion of prayer. Like, prayer changes things, it's like I think your mindset changes things. I think what your actions do change things. um I
Does prayer
think
give you inner peace?
so. Yeah, so to prayer, I would say universally, like generically speaking, when it comes to the word prayer, of like praying to a being for a thing or reflecting upon a thing, I don't really do. But what I do, shout out to all my fourth grade listeners on this podcast.
A
Um,
lot of them.
well, they've been flooding in since Mr.
That's
Brommel's
that's right.
podcast interview. But it's, I do meditation. I have an app with a meditation guide atheist named Sam Harris, and it's delightful. And it's spiritual enough just to be connected, but then not crazy white evangelical conservative Christian enough that it makes me vomit. So that's been really cool. But then also I journal quite a bit, where I kind of like reflect on my day, my moods, what I'm grateful for. And that, I think, is something where it's like I've kind of, maybe I'm short-sighted. Like, I have seen the power of prayer in quotes here for people that are whatever. It's like I've seen cool things happen in my life through churches and things that I can't explain. That's really cool. And then as I got older, that happened less and less and less. And so I've just kind of accepted, it's like, hey, like maybe my faith is so small I can't see those things, or I'm not around those things like I used to. And that's cool. So what I can control is like, hey, I can control how I look at scenarios, or how I can try to interpret my emotions about things. So rather than praying and like asking God for this thing, or saying, God, I'm struggling with this thing, can you help? Or it's always either reflecting, thanking, or asking. And so I'm just like, like, I don't really want to do those things. So how about I just kind of reflect just on what's going on and being grateful about my life and stuff like that. So I do a lot of like reflection and stuff, like through meditation and through journaling. That's been really helpful of just keeping things in perspective, because I think, a lot of things that happen in life, your perspective really frames a lot of it. And I think that's what prayer in the conventional sense is really shaping, or can really be shaping, where it's like, hey, I'm not in control of the situation. I offer this up to a supreme being that is in control of everything, and then I need to trust that whatever happens is going to happen. And generally speaking, that's not a terrible way to live. I do think, though, when we have uh um major gun violence episodes, where things happen and then people say thoughts and prayers, but then they don't do actions, I think that's a little silly. Like, I think you have to kind of do do something, and it can't just be, oh, I want to feel this way, and then that's enough. So I'm very much this, let me reflect on something so I can look at my environment in a way that is true, and not just like how I feel about something or my perception of something. And then I can go and take action, because, Colin, unfortunately, more than anybody else, I am an action guy. So it's like, if
You
I just sit
you are, but I want to like before you go a little bit further,
yeah,
like if your 12-year-old self saw you now, would they feel like you 12, 15-year-old, I don't know, just
sure.
significantly younger, would they feel like you are less religious now, that or that your relationship has changed in such a way that you don't even recognize that relationship?
I mean, probably. I mean, that's
Would you criticize yourself? Would your
dude, I
12-year-old self
what
criticize your, how old are you?
what
30?
32. So like, if I was 12 at one point, shout out to my friend Britton from the band Chrome Rodeo.
Yeah, you can get bent, Britt.
No, yeah. But like, I remember telling Britt one time, dude, how can you call yourself like a Christian and vote Democrat? Like, I said that to a human being in my lifetime. And for
Does
everyone
not
that's listening
surprise
in,
me.
for anyone that's like listening in and you cringed or threw up a little bit in your mouth, I know. Like, it's really bad, and I'm so regretful of that. And so like I kind of hope my 12-year-old person does look at me and say like, oh, that person's not religious, or that person's not as spiritual as I am, or whatever pious thing I said at that point in my life. But like, am I a more whole person? Am I better emotionally regulated? Am I more connected to the things around me? You bet. And so I think that's kind of my trade-off, is like, I'd rather be whole and in a healthier place to give and to be a part of things than thinking that I know all the answers because I read uh this book that wasn't about me, but then everybody in my circle thinks this book is about them, and that's not what the Bible is. The the promises of Israel, or whatever you're reading in the Bible, it's not for America. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's like it's a super controversial thing, but it's not about us. So I just reading things growing up, it's always like, oh, this means this to me. I'm like, I love that you love that means something to you, and I appreciate that. But man, that is not the point. So I'm doing the Obama thumb thumbing
For
for
those watching on the video feed. So here's a question I've always had, that I've always been fascinated with, especially with people who have a very intense religious background, or even continue to be intensely religious.
Question: do you consider me intensely religious?
This podcast is brought to you in part by Special Tees. Are you in a band that wants merch but does not know where to go? Are you looking for great quality and affordable pricing? Do you have a design that you like to put on a koozie for your favorite consumable beverage? How about office swag for your job, or giveaway items for all of your events? Okay, you get the point now, but you have to look no further than Special Tees for all your heart's printing desires. The Could Be Better podcast listeners can act now and get 10% of your first order if you tell them Could Be Better sent you. Visit their website at www.special-tees.com, or use the link in the show notes to get the conversation started. You can even call ahead and visit their showroom to see all types of products, everything that they offer. Again, telling them Could Be Better sent you via email, phone call, or carrier pigeon. It'll get you 10% off your first order. That's www.special-tees.com. Special Tees. If you haven't worked with them, they want to work with you. I don't know. Every time we've had these types of conversations, you kind of dance around, and you kind of, it feels like right now you're more in like a hippie God mode, where it's like, what is beautiful? This is
Yes.
beautiful. I'm thankful for this. Like, I don't have to recite, John 3:16 every day to feel connected to God, as Stone Cold would say. Hell yeah.
Brother.
But the thing that always crosses me up, and I've watched well, I've watched more of these than I would have had my life been in a different place currently, but I've watched a lot of religious documentaries over the last several years. And I mean, we'll throw Scientology into another box. That'll be another episode. But something that's always fascinated me. I was a senior in high school, and I asked him. I come from a very small town, and there was a very small church there that was in town. That was pretty much it. And I asked them if I could give the sermon, if I could write a sermon and give it at the service, the worship, whatever you would call it, one week. And I did. And the year, I guess it would have been in the spring of 2002. And I wrote this big long thing about how maybe the September 11, 2001 attacks were, I guess, more nuanced, because the people who did those did that in the name of religion. And my thought was, well, why? How can religion dictate this or inspire something as heinous as this and awful as this? We're all supposed to be on the same page, and it's all love. So the thing that I've always kind of wondered about it is that those differences in religion and what it inspires people to do. Now, that's a very long setup to the recent series. I think it was on Hulu or maybe FX, I'm not sure, about Hillsong. Did you watch that and anybody watching on the video feed, you could see the disappointment in Chris's face. So what do you have to say about Hillsong? Because that seems to be something, or I say, if you really believe in God, and you just like, if you're at a place where you are at currently, where it's beauty and it's grace and it's thankful and it's blessing, how do you reconcile that with those types of things?
Oof, that's a great setup. And sidebar before we get to it, do you still have that message that you dropped? Like, do you have it written down anywhere?
I did, yeah. I typed it out. It's somewhere, yeah. It's
I
probably in the closet here.
I would love to read that, because I mean, did you get claps afterwards, or did you get shown the door?
No, it was very nice, because on top of it, was a very small town in rural Pennsylvania, it's going to lean right, it's going
Right.
to lean, and so getting up in front of people is going to be scary. Word kind of got out in the high school that I was going to do this, so there were people there that wouldn't normally be there, and um I had never seen this before. When I got done, everybody clapped, and then so they all clapped. This is one of my favorite moments in my life. They all clap, like everything's like pumped, and I'm scared, I'm sweating through my clothes. I'm 17-year-old 18-year-old me, so some things never change. But I hear all these claps and everything, and so I say, very into the microphone, very very quietly, okay, now please bow your head. And the whole place goes silent, and everybody bows their head to pray. And then I lean in and I go even quieter and I say, I'm sorry, I always wanted to do that. I didn't have a prayer. I
That's
didn't.
so good.
And I got a laugh
Wow.
from everybody, man. Like that. That
Look
was
at you. Dropping the heavy words, and then being like, ha ha hee hee at the
You
end.
have to
That's
get them
amazing.
back somehow, man. I was
Love it.
I was
That's a
scared, but yeah, I'll
that's a
give it
great
to you if
story.
I find it yet.
Yeah, I'd love that. I love that. Okay, so to answer your question, okay. So Hillsong, the collapse of Hillsong, Carl Lentz, the whole church, the whole thing. So if you've made it this far in the podcast,
Yeah, God bless you.
yeah, I mean, like, you're damaged as like we all are when it comes to organized religion and all the things. And we cheers you, we salute you, and we're gonna continue going down this. Also, I feel like we should have done a trigger warning at this point, because man, church has screwed up a lot of people.
Well,
Yeah, I definitely let that one slip. Whatever, sorry.
we'll
But
drop it. We'll bump it.
boop. Um, church has screwed up a lot of people, and I think, like, for every person that I meet that has had a negative reaction with church, it's like 3 to 1. Like, oh, I like church, I like this stuff. I'm like, cool. And then it's like, I hate church. This person did this thing. They molested me. They stole money. They cheated on their wife. It's just like, man. So your question of Hillsong and where things are and all the things, there's got to be a very clear distinction of God's spirituality, connection with the universe, with what you believe, with where you spend your time, where you spend your money, and a physical building place that you go to on a Sunday or a Saturday or whatever. And the only experience that I have is a as a white male in America, is a non-denominational denomination. So that's typically where, like, the Hillsongs fall. That's where
Right. Yeah.
Mars Hill falls, which
Mhm.
is that big church out west. And so for me, I had friends that went there. I have
To
friends that
Hillsong?
yeah, to Hillsong and to Mars Hill. And then I had friends that went to Elevation, which is the
Oh.
big one in North Carolina. And so it's like, between that and between all the New York Times articles that went out when all this stuff was happening, hashtag white liberal, I was like reading all the things that were going on, and it's like, I watched it all collapse. I've seen all the things that are happening. I didn't need to watch this documentary for something else. unfortunately,
Oh, that's cynical. You could get entertainment out of that. I
so
will even
so
raise my hand and say, by
the,
the end of it, I'm okay with Carl, but go ahead.
yeah, so Carl's PR team is pretty good. And
Yeah.
yeah. And so Carl for Walking Dead fans out there. It's like I love documentaries because they always paint one side very well. And so regardless of what it is, there's always another side to it. And I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong to that. There's just two sides to a story. And if a documentary is trying to share something, there's an angle that they're trying to share. And you can, generally speaking, take whatever story you want and you can pitch it in a way that makes it look like it's not a thing, which is a beauty of storytelling. It's a skill. I love that. So for Hillsong stuff, I watched it go down. I was like, no, like, hey, listen, Carl's going to blame leadership because Carl this, Carl that, not taking personal ownership on stuff. Don't care. Hey, he got thrown into this mega church world. Justin Bieber goes to his church. He has all this power and influence. And then you get unchecked. And like churches generally, not generally speaking, specifically for white evangelical churches in America speaking, they are too big and they are completely not what the church capital C that the Bible talks about. Like it is a business, it is an entity, it is a brand, it is a lifestyle, it's a whole thing. And that is not what like church is supposed to be like. Now, that's not saying like, hey, there aren't good things about big churches and cool things. And it's like Hillsong was a culture changing thing, right? When it came to writing music and introducing things in the 90s, really big in the 2000s. But like just and I didn't want to tell Andrew this on our episode, but like the runners of Cornerstone and Creation Festival both like molested kids in those same showers that like he took showers in. Like everything, when it gets to be too big, people allow things to be unchecked. And like for people that know anything about me, that has screwed me over as well in my life. So it's kind of just like for some reason people trust people that are in religious power in a way that they probably shouldn't be, but because it's a religious spiritual component, they do. And then it gives people a pass. And that pass is really dangerous because I think so in the Bible, it generally talks about, or it specifically talks about, the spirit of discernment. And so it's like your gut, right? And it's like, hey, it's either leading you to do this thing or that thing. And, Colin, I know there's been tons of times in your life where it's like you felt, hey, I should do this thing for this person. I don't know why, but I'm just going to do it. And you just kind of get along with it. Like that's a spiritual leading thing. That's a conscious thing, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's really cool. Some people have that sense about them and some people don't. In churches, I've seen when they get too big, that spirit of discernment just gets lost or disregarded or just unchecked. And so the bigger that churches get, I see these things happen. So like there was Willow Creek Church out in Illinois. The pastor got an assistant and came up and gave him massages when his wife wasn't there, like on trips and business trips. Like this is not a common story anymore. And I'm glad places are making documentaries that just bring to light, like, hey, there are some people that like, Christianity and when people say like, oh, Jesus died for your sins or whatever it is, like that gives you that second chance. People don't realize like, hey, just because you get a second chance or you have endless second chances, which is what my church preaches pretty often, it's like that does not mean that you don't have checks and balances in place to make sure that like people who aren't malicious people or trying to take advantage of people that are innocent don't. And so a lot of times it's like, well, this person says these really good things, but it's like, yeah, but are you checking them? And so back to your question, Carl, Hillsong, they got too big. Things were left unchecked. Even the pastor's dad was hiding a whole scandal, and like the whole thing is just messy. And again, like there's great companies in the United States that do amazing things. Apple, Amazon, Google.
So you're just gonna chalk that up to big business. I get that,
And,
but
yeah.
Do those situations and the ways that they play out in the public, do they sour you on the idea of organized religion at all? Or do you just look at that and you say that's an outlier? It sounds like, when you think about it, it's like, well, this just got too big. Nobody really knew how to deal with how it got this big. Nobody was prepared for it. Everybody messed up in their own way. That's that. Or do you say, man, I'm questioning my own faith?
I mean, so it's a great question, and I think for people that are a part of those organizations, it's like you kind of wrestle with that yourself, right? And so it's like I think there's three parts to this. There's the one of like, okay, hey, are you putting your faith and your spiritual belief in another human, and are you following them blindly and not questioning because they are such a good teacher and you want to do everything that they do, and that's why you fell into this thing, and then when they got ousted into something that wasn't good, your faith was destroyed. It's like, well, my response to that would be your faith is in that person, not necessarily in like the thing that they're talking about. So it's like maybe that's like a thing. The other part is, do I feel like I lose faith or hope in churches because of the bad things that happens? Like I am general. I am always skeptical. I'm saying generally a whole lot. I'm like, why am I saying generally? Because I got interviewed for a movie that was never going to happen. Seth, I love you, but this movie's never going to happen. And he came to my house 8 years ago, and he asked me like, what does Jesus mean to you, Chris? And this whole thing. And I remember being so nervous about talking about how I felt about Jesus or my relationship with Christianity and all these things. And now I'm just like so far past that point, but it's like it's just I know that religion can do a good thing for a lot of people, and I really love that exists for a lot of people. I also am not of the mindset that it needs to be the thing for all people. I think that's just tough. Now, so for churches, do I lose faith in churches because of the bad things that happen? No, but I am skeptical when things do crop up. Like even with my own church, like, hey, like I'm a question asker. Why do we do things this way? Is this the best way? Um, who are we excluding by doing this? Who are we including when we're doing this? Like just being very mindful of like, we're all here trying to look for the same thing, which is a community of people that we'd like to be a part of. And so it's like, if we're missing that, like, so again, I also know there's only so much that I can control. And so there's a level of kind of like tolerance, which is maybe a taboo word now, because it's either you're either 100% for me or you're 100% against me. And I think there's a lot of tolerance that I kind of hold loosely when it comes to churches and organized religion. But I don't think I could ever go to a Hillsong or an Elevation or a Mars Hill. I think if I ever realized, oh, like, one day I look back and the church that I go to now is way bigger than I ever thought. It's like, I'm probably gonna have to do some soul searching to figure out like, hey, is this something like I want to continue to be a part of? The other thing is like, when you leave the table that you're sitting at, you lose that voice at the table. And so I've been part of this church in Frederick for 4-ish years, 5 years. And it's like, I think they do some really cool things for the community. And it's like, do I agree with everything that they say? No, but like, do I agree with everything that anybody does? Like, no, I'm insane, but also like I'm a very free thinker when it comes to that kind of stuff. And Collective Church, I'll name them, maybe the pastor will get upset, but it's like Collective Church is very aware of what I believe, and I'm very open with what I believe and what I kind of think about. And it's like, we all just kind of talk. And so it's really healthy. And I think that's really nice. And if there's things that like end up hurting people in the process, like I always will voice my thought or opinion, or making sure that the lesser than gets that chance to speak up or have a voice at the table, because that's important. And that is what Jesus teaches, like when you really get down to it. So it is just kind of silly. But anyway, a third part to that question, because that was a really long branch, is like, yeah, the church wasn't supposed to be that big. And so for it to be this global thing, it's like, I get it that it grows and it can help all these people and do all these things. But it's like, at a certain point, like, it's money. And so I am cynical about that for sure. And it is impactful, and those things do have monetization to it. But like, then at the end of the day, the first church that was written down in the book of Acts, right? It's literally like a bunch of people getting together and making sure that like widows and orphans have money and shelter and food, and everybody is putting in their money together into one pot to make sure that their community can thrive. That's it. Like, that's church. Like, if we're not, so call me a socialist, do it, but like at the end of the day, like, we're supposed to be taking care of each other, and if we don't, what are we even doing? And if churches are just caring about themselves or their pockets or some stupid Hulu documentary, I don't know if I care about you
Well,
anymore.
so here's, and I'll say this, and then I'll ask one more question because I feel like we're running, and we
Yes.
got to go. But I will say this, especially watching not just clips of the Hillsong documentary, but clips of other documentaries, and even like at 3 a.m. on a Saturday night when I'm coming back from playing a 10 to 2 gig playing blues music there on public television, there is a church service. There's always something to see. And I've always thought this, that you never hear about the people who just kind of wander into that arena, like that wander into those big rooms, like 10,000 seaters, and they go and they're affected by it. It's not that they're huge donors, it's not that they give them all their money, but once a week they go in, and church to them really, charges them up. It reinvigorates them. It makes them feel better. It makes them feel connected. I don't think that story is ever really told about mega churches, because when it comes to mega churches, it's like, well, we're all in, you're over here and we're giving $20,000 a month to this church. Or it's like, oh, I hate those people, it's too big, like all that. But
Yeah.
I do think there is a space in between where it really does matter for some people. And I think that that's a really great thing. Now, the last thing that I will ask you, and then we'll wrap this up, because you are now a father, and how important, if this is not digging too deep, how important is religion going to be when it comes to raising your son, Wes? Like, is this something you and Laura have talked about, and how do you want to do it?
Yeah. It's like, even before he showed up, like, Laura was like months pregnant. I'm like, how am I going to tell him that, like, your life still continues even if you don't believe that like Jesus raised from the dead or not? You know what I mean? Like you how you treat people that are different than you doesn't change regardless of if Jesus rose from the dead or not. And it's like, that freaks out a lot of people. Or it's like, or like, I mean, let's talk the big one, right? Hell, right? People are just like,
Right.
oh,
Everybody's afraid of hell.
yeah, but it's like, okay, like there's different ways to look at all sorts of things, and it's like, the
Hell is actually betting on the Rams when they're playing the Eagles and getting 3.5 and seeing that. But anyway,
that,
go ahead.
no, that's amazing, and I'm gonna now change my next answer to say that. But it's like hell, it's like this whole thing of hell and sin, and Jesus coming to save. And guys, everyone that's still here, if anyone's still here, like, I feel like we should pay you money, because this is awful. Like, I don't feel like anybody
Yeah.
cares. This might be our worst episode ever, which we'll be
Oh,
fine.
oh,
Or
it's a
it'll,
low bar.
yeah. But it's like, this whole thing of like sin and it's separating us from God. It's like, man, like, I just think it's things that are just like, yeah, okay. Anyway, to answer your question, maybe the new podcast that I'll start just by myself rambling about religious stuff will be what we'll spot out next year. But like, um, I've really struggled at the beginning of Laura's pregnancy of being like, what am I going to tell this kid? Like, because, you know, and we all know people, or we are people that have religious upbringings or have religious connotations to things in our lives that are impactful. I mean, like, you just like, I would never expect to bump into you on a Sunday at a church ever, but then you just told us a story about you like talking about a sermon. Like, okay, do you have it? And you said it was one of the best things that, like, one of the best stories you can share. So it's like, there are religious under/overtones in our lives that are spiritual or profound and special. And it's like, I grew up pretty white, right? Like, I went to churches, and I went to the summer camps. I went to the youth group stuff. My youth pastor taught me how to play guitar. I played in the church band. Like I sang in the church band.
No
I
music
led.
talk.
Jeez, man. Well, to be fair, church music is not real music. Full stop.
Oh,
Full stop.
Switchfoot would like to see you in their office.
They
Okay.
are not church music by any means, but their new version, their version of The Beautiful Letdown is out now wherever you stream music. Now, but no, like, so, you know, I went through church. I learned to play guitar, did the things, played music on Sundays, did the whole things, did the small group stuff, I did all of those things, and I learned a ton. And I am grateful for the good and the bad through it all. I was the cringy church person. I was the naive church person. I was the stupid church person. Like I've been all of those things that like we think about that we never want to be or we regret being. And it's like I was those people. I am a hypocrite. Well, all of those things, right? Like I get it. But I am still figuring out what that's going to look like for my kid. Like, cause like, can church / organized religion be like a good thing for people? And it's like, yeah, but like, I think everything can be okay in moderation. And I think that's where it's like churches are always saying this all in thing, or this, like, you have to be 100% in or God's going to, spit you out or whatever. This is like, dude, I just don't care. Like, I think there's beauty in being able to kind of hold things lightly and be like, hey, when I'm available to be here, that's fine. But like guilting me to go to a church on a Sunday, guilting me to give, guilting me to serve, guilting me to do stuff. What's the point? Like it's a short-term gain for long-term emotional baggage. It's just not worth it. So I think I'm excited to be able to talk. I never got to really talk to my dad too much about religion stuff. It was always my mom. And so like growing up being homeschooled, like my mom was my teacher, did all this stuff like that. So again, guys, I'm hitting all of your bingo cards tonight. White, homeschooled, Christian, like I get it. We're here, and you all win a gift card from Texas Roadhouse because we still have them.
I don't know why you're not giving them to me. There is no God if you're not giving them to me.
So it's like, but at this point, it's like, I'm excited at least to be able to talk to my kid about things, and I'm trying, and it's still going to be something I'm going to have to deal with, because I think even talking about it tonight, like there's definitely cynicism there.
There's
but
a lot of cynicism. I really do detect that from you, which is a little bit surprising. I mean, this is just one big talking through something, that's
Sure.
what we've been doing for the last however many hours, but it's like, it really is. That's why I wanted to end with that question, because
Yeah.
I don't know if you will sort of amp yourself up to be like, I'm going to be as positive as possible about this, or if you're going to be like, look, dude, this is the deal.
So listen, kids get molested in children's church. So I'm not interested in telling my kid to think that everything's good and everything's okay. Like maybe my kid's going to be a terrible kid and not comply by all the rules, but at least he'll be safe. Like it's just things where it's like, hey, like that's never going to happen it should not happen at the church that I'm at, and I will do my part to make sure that doesn't happen. And if it does, like it'll be on the front page of the Frederick News Post, right? But
very true.
Like, but that all being said, it's like I am very grateful for the experience that I've had, even though it was pretty cookie cutter and cliche and all those things. But like it kind of shaped me into who I am today. And it's like I love that I went on a journey, and all I can hope is that like I give my kid the same skills to navigate those things that I did. Because I'm definitely better for going through the church motions, but man, like I am so grateful that I am still not that 12-year-old that thinks you can't be a Christian and vote Democrat. And that is it for everybody for the Could Be Better podcast, where I am your host, Chris Perry, a believer in Jesus, a registered Democrat, and a friend to all. Colin, this was a fun episode, and I feel like we're gonna get like 6 listens. It's gonna be you, me, Bethany, Laura, and maybe like Andrew, and then I'll be it.
No, play it to Wes when he goes to sleep.
Dude, he will not be a fan. Everybody, this was a fun episode. I hope you had a time, and let us know if this made you angry or you want to argue with me about stuff, because I'm always willing to have conversations with people about all of the things.
And unsubscribe at will.
Please don't. But if you do, I get it. All right, we'll talk to you next week. The Could Be Better podcast was recorded at the Could Be Better Studios somewhere in the middle of Maryland.
This state-of-the-art facility has welcomed in everyone from Ringo Starr to 50 Cent. It can accommodate all of your podcast needs.
What?
Never mind. If you like what you hear, follow us on Instagram, Facebook Threads, and Zanga. Do not forget to check out our website, www.couldbebettermeh.com.
Also, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, if you want to make sure we come back for a 4th season, or don't, and maybe we'll listen to you.
Well, plus don't forget to check out all of our brother and sister podcasts exclusively within the Could Be Better network.
And if all else fails, hey, at least come out to a show every now and then.
Wait, we do shows?
This is so much fun. I'm Chris Perry.
And I'm Colin McGuire. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And don't forget, this could always be better.
The Could Be Better podcast is proud to be a part of the Could Be Better podcast network. We're passionate about creating and using these platforms to dive into topics such as exploring lo-fi, impulsive, small, and otherwise overlooked artworks and creative practices, what happened in the world this week and how to laugh through or at it, and hearing stories from musicians of all walks of life. Check out these podcasts, Could Be Better podcast, This Is Not My Magnum Opus, The Weekly with Kiki, and a brand new show with Stitcherly called The Population, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can visit couldbebettermeh.com/podcasts in the show notes to see the current shows on the Could Be Better podcast network. Let's hang out as we figure out more about ourselves, the community around us, and why Ted Lasso is the greatest show of all time.